That morning had started as it should have. When I went down to the kitchen to get my coffee, the usual silence reigned in the house. My mother was standing in front of the coffee machine, buried in her cell phone as usual. We didn't make eye contact. For some time now, whenever we looked at each other's faces, it was silence that spoke, not words. As I poured my coffee into the cup, I pulled my vibrating phone out of my pocket. The notification screen displayed the name of my bank. At first, I didn't notice. I thought it was just a routine security message, but beneath the headline was a single sentence: $3,000 withdrawn. Chandler Jewelry. My heart raced strangely. That name? The jeweler? It was 6:35 a.m., the transaction time. Who could have made such a payment from my account at that hour? My card was in my wallet. I hadn't given it to anyone. Moreover, the money in that account was my emergency fund, saved up after months of working a second job. I looked up. My mother was still staring at the screen, but there was a small smile on her face. She seemed suspiciously calm. "What's going on?" I asked. My voice came out harsher than I intended. My mother spoke without looking up. "Carmen got engaged last night. Liam proposed to her. It was very romantic." In that moment, everything clicked into place. The jeweler. $3,000, Carmen's engagement. Who withdrew that money? I asked. My voice was clear this time. Cold. My mother finally looked at me. She shrugged. "Your father took care of it. For Carmen's ring. You're not getting married anyway. There's no rush with the money." It's hard to describe how I felt at that moment. My stomach clenched. My hands trembled slightly. But most of all, the emptiness inside me spoke. That familiar emptiness. The emptiness that had made me feel for years that nothing truly belonged to me. "Did you take this money without asking me?" I asked. I was asking, but I already knew the answer. My mother raised her eyebrows. "Your family. What's the big deal? Supporting Carmen is your duty too." Supporting Carmen was my duty. It had always been that way. When I was 5, they made me tear down the walls she had drawn. At 10, I was blamed for her losing the violin competition because I had distracted her during practice. At 16, I won a scholarship, but on the same day, Carmen fell ill. My mother and father were at the hospital. No one congratulated me. Today I'm 25. I work 2 jobs. I live with my family to avoid paying rent because I help with the expenses. I pay most of the household bills every month. But that morning, my mother was only talking about the sparkle of the ring on Carmen's finger. I took my phone and went upstairs. I entered my room and quietly closed the door. I knelt down by the bed. I opened the bank app. I looked at the transaction history again. $3,000 unsigned, unannounced, emotionless. I sent a short message to my father. "How did you withdraw this money?" The reply came 15 minutes later. "Support your family. Carmen's life is changing. You don't need to make such a big deal out of it. You'll get your money back anyway." You'll get your money back. I had never just lost money. I had lost respect. I had lost my right to speak. I had lost my boundaries. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just a loss of $3,000. It was the overflow of all the silence that had been building up inside me for years. Carmen's engagement ring had been bought with my hard work, and no one even thought it was a problem. On the wall was a painting I had drawn as a child, a rainbow with a family of 4 beneath it. Now I looked at it. I was standing at the corner of that painting, half cut off. Maybe even then I had understood that I wasn't at the center of this family, but at the edge. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I began to question not just the money, but everything I had brought with me to stay in this house. This story didn't begin here, but maybe today. Something was ending, and something new was quietly emerging within me. The first crowd I remember was when I had stars in my eyes. I was 5 years old. At the kindergarten end-of-year show, everyone was a rabbit, but I was the sun. Because my teacher had said, Light is good for everyone. Being the sun was beautiful. It was eye-catching. I stepped onto the stage with 2 lines to say. I had memorized them. I was ready. But before I could speak, a commotion erupted on the right side of the stage. My mother jumped to her feet and my father followed her. Carmen was crying. Her nose was bleeding. The reason is still unclear. Maybe she was just scared. Maybe the light hurt her eyes. Maybe she had just learned to cry at that moment. But I, who was supposed to be on stage, the sun, the one who was supposed to receive the applause, I had suddenly disappeared. When the show ended, my mother found me with Carmen in her arms. "You read beautifully, too, I'm sure. But your sister was very scared," she said, as if I had never been on stage, as if I wasn't a child either. Even years later, this scene still comes to mind. Whenever everyone said it was important, something would always happen. And that something would always involve Carmen. Always her. In middle school, I was the top student in my class. When my name was announced at the awards ceremony, I stood up, and the students in front of me clapped. But my mother was on her phone. My father hadn't even come to the ceremony. Later, I found out that Carmen had gone to ballet auditions that day. My mother wasn't in the hall. She was in the parking lot. She was waiting. The ballet group didn't choose her, but they told me they were proud of her for trying everything. My first place? "Good job, daughter," they said. Then the subject changed. Some people want to stand out at a young age, and I did too, but I didn't learn to cry, get sick, or fail to stand out. I learned to be good quietly, turning into an unassuming success. I guess I embraced that at an early age. Carmen is 4 years younger than me, but the energy at home always revolved around her. She would get her hair cut, say, "I can't get used to my new look," and everyone would comfort her. Her grades would drop, and people would say, "There's a problem with the system." If someone upset her, they were immediately blamed. But me, it was as if I wasn't allowed to be upset. I was 14. I had won my first scholarship. I had been accepted into summer school. A 3-week creative writing program. Only 20 people had been selected from across the state. My father read my email, then said, "Carmen's allergies will be really bad this summer. We need to keep the house cool. We can't afford the camp fees." Once again, I backed down. Sometimes I think that, in their eyes, I was really there, but not as a person, more like a carrier, quiet, reliable, non-rebellious. I started writing in high school because I couldn't exist any other way. I learned to scream between the lines. One day, Carmen found my notebook in my room and read it to her friends. "She wrote such sappy stuff," she laughed. When my mother read my notebook, she asked, "Do you really feel this way?" "Yes," I said, "and don't exaggerate," she replied. That day, I noted to myself, they don't want to hear me. And now, years later, when I saw the $3,000 withdrawn from my bank account without permission, I realized they hadn't just taken my money. They'd taken me without my permission. They shared me for a lifetime with patience, silence, and selflessness. But the saddest part is that I grew accustomed to giving myself to them as well, without expecting anything in return, until now. When I went downstairs, there was still no tension in the house. In fact, my mother had opened the kitchen window and was emptying the dishwasher while listening to the birds singing. It was as if $3,000 hadn't been withdrawn from my account without my permission a few hours earlier. It was as if nothing that belonged to me in this house had been disregarded. I sat down quietly on the chair. "We need to talk," I said. My mother glanced at me, but continued arranging the cutlery without saying a word. "You withdrew that money from my account without asking me. That's not just wrong, it's a crime." That's when she looked up. Her expression was the same as when I used to get angry at her for entering my room without permission when I was a child. That cold expression that said I was testing her patience. But she would never apologize. "What's this now?" she said. "It's not appropriate to speak like this about a family matter, Maren." "A family matter?" I said. My voice didn't rise, but my words were clear. "Since when has my bank account become family property?" My mother sighed. Carmen is getting married. She's getting engaged. We've always appreciated the sacrifices you've made over the years, but I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this. At that moment, it was clear they were trying to drive me crazy with the power of words. This isn't making a big deal out of it. It's setting boundaries. This is my money. I earned it. I work 2 jobs. I pay most of the household expenses, but enough is enough. My mother crossed her arms and leaned toward me. Look, Maren, you've always been strong. You've always known how to stand on your own 2 feet. Carmen isn't like you. She's more emotional, more fragile. For someone like you, this is just a little support. A little support? That dismissive statement about $3,000 shattered the last remnants of patience I had left. I'm not emotionless, I said. You've just been expecting me to suppress my feelings for years. She'll handle it. She's already strong. She won't understand anyway. You've placed the weight of everything on my shoulders, and now you're taking my money and calling me ungrateful. Just then, my father walked in through the door. As he hung his coat on the hook, he saw us and noticed the tension. What's going on again? He asked. My mother turned to him. Maren is complaining about the money we withdrew for the engagement ring. My father shook his head. This again? Again. That word said a lot. It wasn't the first time. It was a word that suggested they would brush this off like they had done for years, portraying me as irrational, emotional, and difficult. Maren, my father said, we didn't harm you. We just made a temporary solution. You'll get your money back soon. Besides, you're our daughter. This was another silent threat. You're our daughter. Obey. I am your daughter, yes, but I'm also an adult. You can't withdraw money from my account without permission. If a stranger did that, it would be a crime. It doesn't change just because it's you. Both of them fell silent. They clearly hadn't expected me to speak so clearly, directly, and decisively. But on one side of me, the feeling of, am I doing the wrong thing, still lingered. The thick blanket of guilt they'd been covering me with for years wasn't lifting easily. I didn't expect this from you, my mother finally said. It feels like ingratitude. Ingratitude. That word used as if it were the price for raising me. But I was the invisible servant of this house. Not just someone who didn't expect anything in return, but someone without a voice. But now I wanted to make that voice heard. I pulled my chair back and stood up. You've only used me because I'm resilient. You can't use me anymore. My mother frowned. My father remained silent, but both of them noticed that something had changed. This was not the old Maren. I was no longer silent, compliant, and submissive. I was now someone who spoke up and stood up for myself. I headed for the door. As I was leaving, the last thing my father said quietly behind me was, I hope one day you will understand this attitude of yours. I replied silently to myself. I understood everything today for the first time. When I closed my bedroom door that evening, I was truly alone for the first time. Not just physically, but emotionally as well. It was as if my mother's voice was still echoing inside me. It feels like ingratitude. But I had begun to question not only the $3,000 taken from my account, but also the burdens that had been silently weighing on me for years. I turned on my computer. There was a folder on the desktop labeled Bills. PDF files, screenshots, bank statements, things I'd put in there over the months and years and then forgotten about. At first, it had seemed like a small request. Maren, the electricity bill was a bit high this month. Can you cover it? Mom had a dentist appointment. Her card limit is maxed out. Can you handle it? Carmen's therapist wants cash. We'll transfer it to your account. Can you withdraw it and bring it over? And I had said sure. Every time. I'm staying home anyway. I'll contribute, I had thought. But now, It was time to review these one by one. First, I opened the bank statements for the past 6 months. January, electricity, $147.23. February, Carmen's online therapy, $85. March, my father's car battery, $214.70. April, internet bill, $89.99. May, my mother's birthday cake, $46.50. I didn't buy it, but it went through my credit card. June, Carmen's yoga membership, $130 in just half a year, and the total, $713.42. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. I opened my archive folders, old receipts, emails, photos of receipts, and with each one I saw a suppressed voice in the back of my mind slowly grew louder. You've been financing a life that isn't yours for years. I went back to the summer of 2021. Carmen had started therapy, twice a week with a private therapist. Insurance didn't cover it because it was an alternative method, EMDR or something. The family had decided to unite once, but this unity always fell on the same person, me. I paid for every session for a total of 3 months. 12 weeks times $90 equals $1,080. Carmen had dropped out of school during that time. She would often cry, then go shopping, and suddenly feel better. I, on the other hand, was trying to balance my mood by looking at the minimum payments on my credit cards. By September 2019, my father's car had broken down. "The new starter motor is very expensive, Maren," he said. "Can we cover it with your bonus points?" I had covered it. $463.90. It hadn't been reimbursed to me. And my mother's hospital bill. She had gone to the emergency room with stomach pain. Her card was maxed out. She had given me mine, $687. Almost all of it was brushed off with a "we'll take care of it later," but it was never discussed again. Did they feel embarrassed when they asked me for money? Number. Did they look sorry? Number. Did they thank me? At most they said, "You already make good money." But my salary was just enough for me. Most of the time, it wasn't even enough. I opened a Word document. My hand didn't tremble as I named it. Those who never return .xxx. I started listing them one by one. Electricity bills, internet fees, Carmen's therapy, my father's car expenses, my mother's hospital bills, small purchases made on credit, and now the engagement ring. Finally, I started adding it all up, item by item, month by month, year by year. The total amount was higher than I expected, $9,312.76. And this was only the documented part. What about the things I forgot, the things I never wrote down? Who was keeping track of those? At that moment, I realized I hadn't just given money. I had compromised my own life, my comfort, my progress, and sometimes even my identity. No one had ever shown me the line between silently supporting and silently being exploited. But now I saw it. And from now on, I would be the one to name that line. I hardly left my room for 2 days. I only went out for work, then came back again. The silence in the house was different this time. Stacks of bills, spreadsheets on the computer screen, receipts crammed into drawers. Each one whispered the same thing to me. You didn't just live, you financed other people's lives. Carmen's voice echoed down the hallway. "Liam is coming tonight. It'll be like a family dinner." My mother was excitedly setting the table, ironing the napkins, arranging the silverware. I hadn't been invited, but being inside the house was enough to witness everything. Before dinner began, I went down to the kitchen to get some water. At that moment, Liam walked in. He had flowers in his hand, a classic, unassuming bouquet that gave the impression of, "I'm a gentleman." Our eyes met. He nodded slightly. I stepped aside to let him pass, but he decided to speak. "Maren, thank you for the ring." I froze. "What?" The surprise on my face was genuine. It was an unexpected statement. both a confession and an implication. He continued calmly. "Didn't Carmen tell you? I thought it came from your family, but then your mother mentioned it while talking. It was your idea." I swallowed. My vision went dark for a moment. "So you knew about this?" "Yes, but to be honest, it felt odd that it was done without consulting you. Still, what can I say? You're very generous." Generous. That word stabbed me like a knife at that moment. I wasn't generous. I had been robbed, and now this was being presented to me as a virtue. When Liam said it, there was no regret on his face, maybe a hint of embarrassment, but there was definitely an unsettling naturalness in his voice, as if I were a natural part of this system, as if my material existence had been created to fulfill their dreams. Carmen's laughter came from her room. "Liam, bring the flowers here." At that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a family matter, it was a culture. I was the silent financier of an order built around me. I was like that at home. Now, I was like that in Carmen's relationship, too. I wasn't at their engagement table, but I had contributed to it. The ring was on her finger, but the mark was on my wrist. I left the kitchen. As I climbed the stairs, my hand gripped the banister tightly. My breathing was irregular. As soon as I entered my room, I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, but I hadn't cried, because even if I wanted to cry, anger had acted first. I opened my phone. I sent a message to June. "Can I come over tomorrow evening? I need to stay for a while." The reply came within seconds. "Of course. My door is always open to you." I started packing a bag, a few clothes, my laptop, my document folder. But what I really needed to pack was the sense of duty they had imposed on me. Was I feeling sorry for Carmen? Maybe. But I was more ashamed on her behalf. She had been able to say, "This is mine," while looking at the ring she had put on her finger with my money. And Liam. His indifference behind his mask of politeness was now obvious. These people were charging me for their dreams. They were making me pay for their dreams. And I no longer wanted to carry anyone else's dreams. I didn't know what my own dream was, but I was certain this wasn't it. As I closed the door, I waited to hear a voice behind me. "Wait, don't go!" "Can we talk?" Maybe just a simple, "I'm sorry." But nothing happened. As I left, I saw my mother stirring tea in the kitchen. Carmen was whispering something to Liam on the couch in the living room. My father was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he was at work. Maybe he was unaware of what had happened. Maybe, worst of all, he knew but didn't care. I closed the door, never to return. June's apartment was only 17 minutes away, but the journey felt like hours. In the car, I didn't even turn on the music. I wanted to drown in the silence. Maybe I needed to be alone with the inner voice I'd been suppressing for years. When June opened the door, we didn't hug. I wasn't ready to hug, but she looked into my eyes and said only this, "Come in. Are you hungry?" I nodded. I was hungry, but not for food. I was hungry for a sense of belonging, a home, a place to call my own. That evening, I sat on the couch and stared at the floor for a while before opening my bag. June brought tea. "Is there anything I can do?" she asked. "For now, just being here," I said. And for the first time, I realized I'd been living in a house for years, but I'd never had a space of my own. In June's house, the walls aren't mine, but it's a place where I can breathe. That night, as I lay on the couch and pulled the blanket over me, there was a mix of shame and peace inside me. Shame because I had left my family behind. Peace because for the first time, I didn't feel like I belonged there. But peace is a fleeting thing, because when you're alone in a room, the past comes and sits on your knees. As a child, I would read books quietly in my room, listening to the laughter coming from outside. My mother's baking experiments with Carmen, my father lifting her onto his shoulders and dancing with her. I had always been the good child on the sidelines, the one who didn't make noise, didn't cause trouble, didn't ask for anything. But now, when I tried to ask for something for myself, I felt guilty. June went to work the next morning. I stayed home. I made my coffee and sat down at the small table. For the first time in days, I had no tasks, no responsibilities. I didn't have to prepare food for anyone. I wouldn't have to pay any bills. I wouldn't have to finance Carmen's plans. I was just sitting there. But then I realized this freedom doesn't come easily. Somewhere inside me, I still feel guilty. Because what I was taught was this: your worth is determined by what you give. Now, in this moment, when I'm not giving anything, I feel worthless. That's what trauma is like. When you're alone with yourself, the question, who were you without others, weighs heavily on you. When June came in the evening, she noticed the small notebook in my hand. "Are you writing?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "to remember myself." She didn't laugh. She understood. That night, I wrote this sentence at the top of the notebook. Leaving was easy. Staying wounded me. But maybe now, with those wounds, I can finally live as myself. On the morning of my third day at June's house, I made up my mind while drinking my coffee. By remaining silent, I was continuing to be part of this story. But now I had to tell it, not loudly, not by shouting in their faces, but in a way that could not be silenced, by documenting the facts. I opened my laptop. I reopened the "those who didn't return" file on my desktop. The bills, screenshots, credit card statements, transfer histories. I began sorting them into separate folders. It was as if I were cataloging the disappointment that had built up inside me over the years. Every payment that was promised to be handled but forgotten. Every injustice covered up with a "you cover it for now" was now here, side by side in black and white lines. Each one represented a moment I had remained silent. I named the file, File 22, because when I left home, I was 25. But this exploitation had become evident in the second job I started at 22, without realizing it. From that day on, everything was clearer, and now it can be proven. I took a small folder I started printing. Carmen's therapy, my father's car repair, my mother's hospital bill, electricity, water, internet, purchases made for the house but not belonging to me, Carmen's yoga membership, and finally, the engagement ring. I arranged each document in order, noting the date, amount, and reason for payment. Total: $9,312.76. At the end of the documents, I wrote a short letter. This is not just money. This is the compensation for the labor that has been rendered invisible for years. Forgotten, covered up, taken silently. From now on, the only thing I ask of you is to confront this. This is not a debt. It is the truth. And I will no longer be part of any structure that is not real. I did not sign my name. There was no need. My signature had been silently wandering around this house for years anyway. I finished my preparations in the late afternoon. June told me, "Don't go alone." But this was a path I had to walk alone. Before getting into the car, I put the folder in my bag. It was as if I had taken a mirror, not a weapon, into my hands. I was going to break the silence they had taught me for years with the words, "Don't embarrass us." The house was still the same. My mother's geraniums by the door, my father's old sneakers on the porch, the sound of the television coming from the living room. I knocked on the door. Carmen answered. She paused for a moment. Her eyes quickly darted to my bag. "Are you coming back?" she asked, her voice cautious. "No," I said. "I came to get my things, and this..." I took the folder out of my bag. "Can you leave this on the kitchen table?" Carmen looked at the folder, and there was a simple white label on it. File 22. I didn't go inside. I didn't want to step over that threshold again. "Carmen," I said, without turning around. "Maybe not everything in this house was taken from me, but a lot was, and you won't take any more." I don't remember what she said. Maybe she said nothing. Maybe she said okay, or just nodded. But I started walking. For the first time, without the thought of returning. The folder was on the kitchen table. It was the document of my years of being ignored, of my silent exploitation, and now it would stay there, as written proof of everything they had tried to suppress with silence. That night, my phone was on silent mode. Every notification I had received over the past few days had been frightening me. But when I opened my eyes in the early hours of the morning, I saw a single message lit up on the screen. "Carmen, why did you do that?" 4 words. No shouting, no threats, no denial. Just a short, slow tremor. I stared at the screen for a long time. It was 3:41 a.m., so she had read the file now. It contained 24 pages of documents, 3 years of payment records, and a single-page letter. Everything that had been taken from me was now in front of her. It was too clear to deny, too real to silence. Carmen's message was neither anger nor defense. It was just a tremor. For the first time, the world inside her might be breaking. I didn't reply, because sometimes silence is preferable to 1,000 words. June noticed I was holding the phone while making coffee in the morning. "Did someone send you a message?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just Carmen," she said. "Why did you do that?" She thought for a moment. "That sentence contains both accusation and surprise," she said, "but maybe a little realization too." The faint sound of the teaspoon hitting the ceramic echoed in the silence. I returned to the same silence. I thought about Carmen's Instagram post where she posed with her engagement ring. Hundreds of likes, pink hearts, comments like, "You look great together." But the cost of that photo was me. The ring's sparkle shone above my sleepless nights, weekends spent at my second job, and restricted expenses. And now, as she looked at the ring, Carmen might have wondered for the first time, who paid for this? No other messages came that day. But for the first time, the absence of messages didn't cause unease, because silence is sometimes not a sign of denial, but of acceptance. In the late afternoon, June went out. I stayed home alone. I sat on the couch and opened an old notebook. There were a few short sentences I'd jotted down on the margin. My sister was most afraid of resembling me. It was easy not to see me because if I became visible, everything would fall apart. It wasn't anger that built up inside me, but emptiness. Because if someone constantly forgets you, one day you forget yourself too. Carmen's silence reminded me of these lines from the past. Perhaps for the first time, she'd put herself in my place. Perhaps for the first time, she was realizing life was constantly being given to her. But she had never asked what she had taken and at what cost. The next morning, I checked my phone again. There were no new messages. But I wasn't expecting anything, because if there was one thing I had learned during this process, it was this. It's easy to break, but it takes time to reshape. Carmen was breaking, and that was a good thing. For years, everyone had blamed me for her downfalls. But this time, I hadn't done anything. I had only shown the truth. For the first time, Carmen was facing her own struggles within herself, and for the first time, I found peace in her silence. Perhaps this message was not a scream, but the first crack in a wall. Perhaps for the first time, we would begin from a place where we could truly hear each other. A week after leaving the file on the kitchen table, what I had been expecting happened. My phone rang at 10:12 in the morning. The name on the screen was Aunt Elise, Carmen's godmother, my father's younger sister, one of the few reasonable people in the family, someone who listens without judgment, doesn't take sides unnecessarily, but always believes that everything should be resolved in silence. "Hello, sweetie," she said directly. Her voice was soft, but there was tension hidden in it. "The file you left, I saw it. It reached me." So the family chain had begun. In our family, things are more powerful when they're passed around secretly rather than spoken openly. "I shared it with a few people," said Elise. I thought they needed to know, especially your mother's sister, Aunt Valerie. She had some questions, too. I took a deep breath inside. It was something I knew, even expected, but it was still surprising. The cracking of an order raised in silence. By noon that day, I had received messages from 4 different people on my phone. Cousin Jordan, I never would have guessed such things happened. We always thought you were shy but strong. Aunt Beatrice, I didn't know your father did such things to you. It must have slipped my mind. Cousin Eliza, Carmen was always praised, yes, but I never noticed you quietly enduring everything. And the last message was from the person who surprised me the most, my grandfather. Maren, I saw your file. We need to talk to your father, and to you as soon as possible. My heart raced at that moment, because if there was anyone in the family who spoke up, it was my grandfather. He was old, tired, but he never looked away when he saw injustice. That evening, Elise called me. A few of us are gathering, she said, just to talk. We want to listen to you. Really. This can't be ignored any longer. At first, I thought it would be brushed off like a family dinner. But the seriousness in her tone was different. This time, the tablecloth wouldn't be laid. The cracks beneath it would be discussed. The meeting was on Sunday, at Elise's house. When I arrived, there were 7 people there. Elise, Valerie, my cousins Eliza and Jordan, Aunt Beatrice, and my grandfather and grandmother. My mother wasn't there. My father wasn't there at all. Carmen hadn't been invited or hadn't come if she had been. As Elise poured the tea, my grandfather sat up straight in his chair. Maren, he said, you've been wronged. And not just financially, but emotionally, too. Without looking away, he added, if my son did this, he needs to face it. I trembled inside. The feeling of being belittled that had been building up inside me for years receded a few millimeters in that moment. For the first time, someone was speaking clearly, without beating around the bush, without adding but, without saying, it's family after all. They opened the documents and examined them one by one. Some lines were read aloud. There were moments of silence, especially when discussing Carmen's therapy bills and the engagement ring. Aunt Valerie furrowed her brows. How could they have burdened you with so much? Didn't they think at all? Maybe they did, I said, but it didn't suit their purposes. Eliza bowed her head. I always thought you were too emotionless, but now I understand. You were just very lonely. Yes, because loneliness doesn't always scream. It just makes you live a little more quietly. No one clapped for me at that meeting. No one hugged me and cried. But the words that replaced the silence were the greatest applause for me. As I got up from Elise's desk that day, I knew being right isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be seen. And for the first time, I was beginning to be seen. After the meeting, everyone dispersed, but my grandmother, Sylvia, did not leave. She was sitting in Elise's living room with her bag on her lap. She took a sip of her tea, then looked up and met my gaze. I recognized that look. She was not just looking. She was really seeing me at that moment. Shall we go for a walk? She said. We went out into Elise's backyard. It was quiet. The evening sun lay like a soft blanket over the grass. We didn't speak for a while. As the sound of our footsteps echoed on the ground, I tried to gather my thoughts. But she was the first to speak. I didn't know everything, Maren, but I never acted like I didn't know anything. I just didn't ask. I didn't speak because I could feel him pausing to confront what was going on inside him. True regret was like that, quiet, unassuming, and belated, but honest. You were little, he said. You were very quiet. But I've noticed that quiet children often want to be heard the most. I always paid attention. When someone's birthday was forgotten, when a homework presentation was ignored, you were always invisible. But you were still there. It was as if someone had finally spoken aloud the sentence that had echoed inside me for years but had never come out. I was invisible, but I was there. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't cry, because this wasn't sadness, it was a moment of acceptance. Sylvia opened her bag. She pulled out a yellowed envelope. On it was a handwritten note, Maren's education, 2007. She handed me the envelope. We opened this together with your grandfather. You were in 4th grade. At the time, we wanted to set up separate small funds for each of you. Your father took the one for Carmen. Yours was going to be open too, but then things changed. I opened the envelope. Inside were a few bank documents and a statement of account. The total amount was $7,500. It had grown with interest over the years and was withdrawn in 2016. That was the year Carmen started therapy, and I gave up summer school because there were priorities at home. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. Sylvia took a deep breath. "Because I've thought about it for years. I thought silence would protect us. But silence doesn't just hide you, it hides the truth too." I bowed my head. So many things went through my mind at that moment. On one hand, anger, because something that belonged to me had been taken without permission. On the other hand, heartbreak, because with that money, I could have gone to the summer program I had dreamed of. Maybe my life would have changed sooner, but part of me was filled with a strange sense of gratitude, because finally someone was trying to put the missing pieces back together. Your father didn't tell you about the fund. We stayed silent too. But now, whatever you do it knowing this information. This was about you, Maren. It still is. I carefully folded the papers and put them in my bag. This wasn't just a bank document. It was a document of rights against the system that had been telling me to shut up and deal with it for years. When I returned to June's house that night, I went out onto the balcony. I didn't look at the stars. I looked into the distance. Because for the first time, I was looking toward the future, not from the shadow of the past, but from the truth. I silently told myself, I'm speaking not just for myself, but for everyone who's been silenced. And I knew, from now on, no document would be just a piece of paper. They would all be the voice of silenced lives. I wasn't expecting anyone when the doorbell rang. June was at work. I just finished my afternoon coffee and was looking out the window. The sound of the doorbell breaking the silence caused my heart to skip a beat. I walked slowly toward the door. Carmen was standing there. Her posture was different than usual. Her shoulders were slightly slumped, and her bag was hanging on her back instead of in her hand. The familiar, confident expression on her face was gone. Something else had taken its place. Shyness, perhaps even shame. "Can we talk for a moment?" she said. Her voice was slow and nervous. I let her in. We sat down, not on the couch, but at opposite ends of the kitchen table. Neither of us spoke for the first minute. Then I began. "You read the file?" He nodded. "Yes." We fell silent again. Then he took a deep breath and spoke without looking into my eyes. "I always thought you were strong. That's why I didn't notice the burden on you. But maybe I didn't want to notice." Her voice cracked a little. But it wasn't the voice of someone who wanted to cry. It was the voice of someone looking into a mirror inside themselves for the first time. "I was crushed too," she said. "Maybe not like you, but in a different way." I bowed my head. There was no anger inside me at that moment, only curiosity. Because I had always seen Carmen as the privileged one. Could she also feel like a victim? "What do you mean?" I asked. "I was never given a choice," she said. "What to wear, which sport to play, what to read. Everything was decided by others. I was always seen as fragile. But in reality, I was just a project meant to be shaped. My successes were always an extension of my parents. And the saddest part is, while living the life they offered me, I never learned who I truly was." Her words cut deep, because I had always assumed she got everything she wanted. But now I realized I was exploited. She was shaped. I disappeared by staying silent. She was suffocated by expectations. "I never thanked you," she said afterward. "Not just for the money, for your silence, for your patience. And now, for no longer staying silent." We locked eyes. I looked at Carmen for the first time, and for the first time, I didn't see her as different from me. For the first time, we weren't standing at opposite ends of the same line. We were two siblings in the same circle, exposed to the same pressure from different directions. "I can't give you back what was taken from you," she said. But then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This is symbolic, but it means something to me." I didn't take the envelope. Seeing it was enough. "I was angry with you," I said. "I'm still not fully healed, but for the first time, I feel like I really hear you." Carmen didn't look away, and for the first time, I feel like I can explain myself to you. After a few seconds of silence, she stood up. "I have to go, but let this be a start. Maybe we can be sisters this time." "Really?" I walked her to the door. As she left, she turned back. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't cry, just like me. For the first time, we had truly spoken, and for the first time, what we had kept silent about had brought us closer together instead of keeping us apart. After Carmen left, I just sat there at the table. There was no sound in my mind, only echoes. Maybe we can really be siblings this time. That sentence strangely warmed my heart and hurt it at the same time, because I knew it came from the heart. But even things that come from the heart sometimes come too late, much too late. I didn't do anything that day. I didn't make any plans. I didn't try to solve anything. I just thought about my own life, about when my relationship with Carmen had turned into a silent competition. I'd seen every privilege she was given, but it took me a while to realize that she didn't really have anything. Every responsibility placed on me had created an identity. I was a child thrust into adulthood too soon, but her identity had always been written by others. The next morning, I received a message from Carmen. "Can we have coffee together? I want to show you something." We met at a cafe, a simple, small place, not overly fancy. It was clear she had chosen it deliberately. Carmen had come with a few documents in her hand. One of them caught my attention, an application form for the Social Services Department at a state university. "This time, I chose it myself," she said. "No one influenced me. No one said, 'That's more prestigious,' or 'This is more profitable.'" I looked at her for a long time. For the first time, I saw someone trying to be themselves, not someone else. But then something else surprised me. "This isn't a debt repayment," she said, pulling a small card from her bag. Inside were handwritten sentences. "I've understood what you taught me. Help begins not with selflessness, but with boundaries. I won't ask you for help anymore, but I'm learning to respect you." At that moment, something didn't break inside me. On the contrary, something was repaired. I had always thought that I built love by helping. But now I understood true love was about setting boundaries. It was about being able to stand by someone without sacrificing yourself, without losing yourself. "This is enough for me," I said quietly. Our coffees grew cold, but our conversation grew warm. We talked about life, childhood, even about attending a therapy session together one day. We shared how we had hurt each other, how we had remained silent, how what we had swallowed had cast a shadow over us. In the end, the sentence Carmen said to me still lingers in my mind. "I always waited for you to reach out to me, but instead of reaching out, you resisted. Now I want there to be a path we can both walk on. Maybe not the same path, but one where we understand each other." With that sentence, a chapter inside me closed. I no longer needed to save Carmen. Witnessing her decisions was enough, and for the first time, I chose to simply witness As we left the cafe, she hugged me. This hug was different from all those mechanical photo op hugs of the past. It was a moment when two broken women looked at each other's wounds and said, "I no longer blame you." When the alarm went off in the morning, I didn't feel that familiar heaviness inside me. This wasn't one of those mornings when I struggled to get out of bed, muttering, "I wish today would end already." This morning was different. It was my first day at a new job, the quiet marathon of a new beginning, a social media agency, small but creative. Its name, Firefly and Finch. After reading my resume, the agency director, Nico, said, "There's strategy in your story. Everyone who grows through resilience has a sharp mind." When I took my first step into the office that day, I wasn't greeted with flowers, but there was a desk for me, an email address opened in my name. And by the end of the first day, the first message in that email, "You need to verify your bank account. Your first paycheck is about to be deposited." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Suddenly, years flashed before my eyes. My father saying, "I'll pay later," while paying the electricity bill. The night Carmen's therapy fee was charged to my card, and that $3,000 jewelry purchase. This time, it wouldn't be like that. I went to the bank. It was a small branch in a small town. The clerk had me verify my old account information. I hesitated for a moment while the system was open. Then I took out my old bank card from my bag. That card wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was a symbol of the years I thought were mine but were controlled by others. "I want to cancel this card," I said. The clerk nodded. "Should I process the new account?" "Yes, please, but this time, let it be mine alone." And I added to myself, "Let me be the only one to spend it. Let me be the only one to account for it." The new account was opened. My card was selected. My password was entered. And as the final step, "Should the old card be cut up?" I was asked. I took the old card out of my wallet. Before looking at the clerk holding the scissors, I said, "I want to cut it myself." I took the scissors in my hand, and slowly, snip. The card was split into two equal pieces. That small sound was the closing bell of a great era within me. When I returned to the agency, I had the new card in my pocket. My name was on it. Below it, a future opened with a zero balance. My first paycheck arrived a few days later. With my own money, I bought something for myself for the first time without any explanation. A second-hand but sturdy desk. My roommate June smiled when she saw the desk. "Now you're a real adult." No, I'm not just a visible adult anymore. I'm truly holding my own reins. That night, sitting at the desk, I wrote myself a small note. Independence doesn't start with big words, but with small decisions. Today I cut not just my bank card, but also my old burdens. The title of this section came to me spontaneously, Independence Day. And this time, I didn't wait for a celebration. The silent applause rising from within me was enough. When the doorbell rang, it was still light outside, but inside, it was quiet. June was outside, and I was sitting at my desk sipping tea on my laptop. My mind was on the weekly strategy presentation, or at least it should have been. But that sound... There was something familiar about the sound of the doorbell. When I opened the door, Carmen was standing there. She wasn't wearing any makeup. Her hair was uncombed. In her eyes, there was something that looked at me directly for the first time. Truth. "Can we talk?" she said. There were no more long conversations between us. But that sentence was enough. When she came in, she had two things in her hands. One was a small velvet box. The other was a thin white envelope. I didn't say anything. She didn't rush either. She sat down at the chair at the kitchen table, opened the box. It didn't take me long to recognize the ring. A diamond engagement ring from the city's most expensive jeweler. It had been bought with my money. But this time, Carmen hadn't brought it to put on her fingers. She placed it silently on the table. Then she opened the envelope and took out a check. Exactly $3,000. The same amount that had been withdrawn from my account that morning, torn from my life. "I know this won't be enough for you," she said. Her voice didn't tremble, but her eyes were still avoiding mine. I brought the ring back. I told Liam, too. We both knew, but I stayed silent. I just watched. I watched as someone trying to protect me was crushed. I stayed silent. "This money isn't for you," she continued. "It's for the injustice done to us. For the system that belittled you, inflated me, and broke both of us. I'm trying to make amends. For every day I was late." Thousands of sentences swirled in my mind. "I'm not expecting this money from you. This money won't make what happened go away. Bringing back the ring won't fix anything." But I didn't say any of them, because at that moment Carmen was talking about her conscience, not the ring. I looked at the table. The ring lay there like a glittering accomplice, but the check next to it, it wasn't just money. It was the courage to take a step forward. "This must not have been easy for you," I said. "If it had been easy, I would have done it sooner." Her voice was soft this time. "It's impossible for me not to see what you've done for me, what you've given, what you've kept silent about," she continued. "You were always the one giving, even though you never asked for anything from me. But this time, I will give." Something inside me relaxed. Not pride. A sense of fulfillment replacing that old silent hunger for approval. He no longer belonged to me. "Forgiving you or not will take some time," I said. "I know that," he said, bowing his head, "and I'm ready to wait. Only, I really want to see you now, as a brother, as an individual, by your side, not in your shadow." A faint smile flickered between us in the silence, tense but honest. That day, when Carmen left, she didn't take back the ring or the check. Everything stayed on the table. But for the first time, she left something behind when she left that house. Not excuses, but responsibility. And for the first time, I felt like I was holding something far more valuable than a physical ring. The first stitches of a broken bond beginning to heal. The digital clock in the corner of the kitchen read 11:47 p.m. It was the last night of December. Outside, snowflakes were falling slowly. Inside, warm laughter filled the air. My room, this small but my own home that I rented with the money I earned, was crowded for the first time. June was dancing in the middle of the kitchen, holding an orange peel cocktail. My new co-workers, Luca and Davina, were discussing something on the couch. I think it was about the best New Year's Eve song. And I was just watching. If someone had told me a few months ago that I'd be celebrating New Year's Eve, I would have laughed. Without family, without a mother, without my father, even without Carmen. But here I was, not alone, free. I stepped into the living room. I stood by the window and watched the snow falling outside. Like every New Year's Eve, everyone was asking themselves, what did this year teach me? My answer was very clear. This year taught me about myself. I thought I had lost many things throughout the year, trust, family, the past, but when I looked back, I realized those losses were actually gains. Because the reason I am here tonight is not because of what I lost. It's because of what I gave up. It took me time to forgive Carmen. I still don't talk to my mother and father. At the beginning of December, a card arrived. It had only 3 words on it. Our door is always open. There wasn't even a signature. That door had already closed for me. This sentence crossed my mind. Family isn't always the ones who gave birth to you, but the ones who carried you. It was 11:57 p.m. June appeared beside me, holding champagne glasses. "Are you ready?" she asked. "More than ever," I said with a smile. We handed out the glasses. Luca dimmed the lights and started the countdown. We gathered in the middle of the living room. 30, 29, 28. My heart was beating with an odd sense of peace. 20 மற்றும் 19. For years, I had felt obligated to spend New Year's Eve with my family. Now, there was no obligation to do anything I didn't want to. 10, 9, 8, June turned to me. Make a wish this year, but for the first time, make it for yourself. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The lights flickered, laughter rose, music played, glasses clinked, someone jumped up and shouted, "New Year's manifesto!" I just smiled. New year, new resolutions. But my decision had already been made. I wouldn't live my life according to others' decisions anymore. I stepped aside and looked at my phone. A new message, Carmen. I hope you're truly happy tonight. I don't know anyone who has been as brave as you this year. 2025 will be your year. I thought for a moment. This message wasn't from the Carmen of a year ago, but now she too had started walking her own path. Everyone had their own path, and sometimes the right path was to walk separately. I hung up the phone, and a sentence echoed inside me. Everything I thought I'd lost a year ago had actually paved the way for me.